Good day. Thank you for coming online here. As I promised to have the video version of this lecture, so this is to complement all that we have done in the class, right? It's not to replace your study material in any way. Imagine all the topics that we have done in the class, and I am trying to come up with a lecture video of less than 1 hour to explain all that we've been having in class. Okay, so this is just to add up to all that you have learned in the class. So you still have to have you're going to be having a fallback on your material. But I've come up with an excerpt of all that we have had in the class. Okay. Now, as you know, this course is PES 408 titled Introduction to Adult Education, right? And we looked at several topics there. If you are new to my channel, thank you for coming. Kindly hit the subscribe button. I have several other videos that you will love. So and kindly share. And if you are not new, kindly put up comments, engage in the video, right? Thank you very much. Yeah, let's quickly go through the topics of this course, right? We'll be looking at the concepts of adult education. The first topic has to do with now what are introductory concepts in adult education. For example, what is adult education? Then when we're talking about what is adult education, you can't just outrightly say, oh, this is adult education. You must tell us who is an adult. You must tell us what is education. Okay, before coming up with adult education definition, then you'll be very free to be unreasonable to tell us, okay, adult basic education implies this. Basically, that means that before I can tell you that I am Ojo Samuel by name, I must have told you what's the meaning of Ojo, what's the meaning of Samuel before joining the two, then explaining to you that Ojo Samuel therefore means that. It is then I can be free to go to the level of explaining adult basic education. So when we are talking about an adult to you might not be an adult to me, right? Adults to this society might not be an adult to this society. Basically, that implies that there are different characteristics, there are different determinants of who an adult is. But basically, when we are referring to an adult, he is such an individual who has reached a physical, psychological, social, and legal maturity stage. He is such an individual that has gotten to the point of physical, psychological, right, social, and legal maturity stage, and that person is capable of taking responsibilities for personal, family, and societal obligations. Okay, when such person is given a task, the person goes ahead to carry out the task without necessarily being supervised. When the person carried out the task, he is ready to be accountable for the task he just carried out. Okay, it's not an individual that spontaneously carried out an action. Okay, he's such an individual that is accountable in all his dealings. Okay, when we're talking about who an adult is, so the person must have attained all these levels. Okay, he must have attained the level of physical maturity, psychological maturity, social maturity, in the sense that the person must be seen to be adult really in the society. You can't tell me that you're an adult when people around you in the society do not see you to be an adult. That's the reason you have a child that will be telling you that no, I'm an adult, and people will be saying that, okay, you are not an adult yet. Why? Because there are social standards the person is expected to have gotten to. If the person is falling short of that, they will say this person is not an adult, even if you seem to have money. Me and you know what is going on in the round of Oludo or uprising and all of that. So they say that, oh, these characters, they might have this, they might have that, but they are not adults. Why? Because by social standard, they are not adults. But when we are referring to an adult, it means somebody who has reached physical, psychological, social, and legal maturity in all areas, and the person is accountable for all that he's doing. The person is able to stand up to every obligation given to him. Now, let's quickly look at what then is education. Now, when we're talking about education is more like rice, beans, meat, egg, and all that. Okay, it is broader. But when we're talking about literacy, it is just like you are giving a basic education. They just give you rice just for you to eat and be okay. But education encompasses all that. It has to do with every learning activity. It has to do with learning, lifelong process of acquiring knowledge, lifelong process of acquiring knowledge, lifelong process of acquiring skills, lifelong process of acquiring values, attitudes, and competencies. Now, all these values, all this, you are acquiring them through formal, informal, and even non-formal learning learning experiences. So it's not limited to what you are learning in the school. It also involves what you are learning in the society. It's not limited to what you are learning in the society. it also involves what you learn in your lifetime. That is what we refer to as education. That's the reason you get to hear that they say that that person just went to school. School did not go through him. Why? Because he had gone to school, he may have graduated with a first class, but when in the society, he is not responsible. Responsible in the sense that he is not contributing in any way positive to this to the society. They'll say he's not educated, right? It's not, but that's his social expectation education. Now, when we are talking about adult education, then we are talking about organized and purposeful learning activities designed for who the society term to be adults. Okay, every process put in place to provide organized learning opportunities for somebody that the society is seeing as an adult. And why? For the purpose of improving the person's knowledge, skill, attitudes, and competencies for his personal growth or for his societal growth. Okay, every of such learning activity. Now, when we're talking about adult education, after we've been able to look at what education means, that it's a lifelong process of learning and all that. Now we're talking about adult education. Now, all of the learning program, organized and purposeful learning program or learning activity that you set up for who the society sees as an adult, that is what is referred to as adult education. Now, going back to the material as you have in the front, is an organized and purposeful learning activity that targets individuals who are considered adults by look at the determinants, social, legal, and developmental standards. Okay, every form of such education, they attempt to be adult education. It is not limited to traditional classroom as you guys are having it. It's not age restricted. It's not even society restricted. Okay, it is not limited to a particular form of education. That's when I said that it involves formal, non-formal, right? And it also includes informal. Okay, so it involves all forms of education. Every learning curve that you go through, they are attempt to be adult education. Okay, now let's move ahead and talk about what then is adult basic education. When we are referring to adult basic I'll still come back to some characteristics and all of those things. Just as I said, I'm trying to pick all the key points in the study material. Now, when we're talking about adult basic education, then we are referring to every educational program that are designed to help adults acquire basic knowledge and skills that they may possibly have missed during their formal school. This skill possibly could be reading, the 3 R's, the reading, writing, arithmetics, and digital literacy. It could be communication skill. It could be life skill that so long they needed that for their everyday living. He dropped out of school, so he doesn't know how to read. He dropped out of school, he doesn't know how to write. He dropped out of school, he doesn't know how to do simple arithmetic. He dropped out of school, he didn't get certain digital skills or whatever. He did not even go to school at all. Yes, therefore, some technological skill he doesn't have. So every educational program that are designed to target any of these skills, they are referred to as adult basic education. It's just like me saying that you don't know how to talk, then I organize a particular educational program for you so that you can know how to talk. That educational program is targeted at you knowing how to talk. That is basic adult basic education. You seem to be adult, then I organized that educational program to target you so that you can know how to talk. And another point is that this person does not know how to read or write, and now organize a training program or an educational program for such an individual that is termed adult basic education. Is that clear? Then who is an adult? So before you can talk about who is an adult holistically, then you will look at different determinants of adult. And the first point is biological perspective of adulthood. Biological perspective in the sense that we want to look at, okay, from this point to this point, up to this point, there are some characteristics that this person has gotten. Therefore, we can say that this person is an adult. From a biological standpoint, adulthood begins after adolescence, a period marked by attainment of full, mind the word, physical maturity. Full physical maturity. He is seen to have possessed this part of his body, this part of our body. They have grown to a point that we can say that this person is an adult. Okay, that is biological perspective. Another one is legal perspective. Nigeria will tell you that at the age of 18, you have right to vote and be voted for. At the age of 18, you have right to go get married. At the age of 18, you can sign contract or you can be held accountable for your action. But below that, if the person does anything wrong, they will take the person to the remedial home or something. Yeah, the person will not be adjudged adult punishment. But the moment the person gets to the point of that is legal definition of adulthood. The other point is psychological aspect of that. Some people they get to do something, sometimes they say, oh, this person is not acting as adult. What the society is expecting is that psychologically this person cannot take the pressure of who an adult should be able to take. Okay. Now at that point they are looking at the psychological aspect of adulthood. Now the other point, social dimensions of adulthood. Now, for somebody that was disqualified on the ground of psychological aspect, he might be qualified on the aspect of social dimensions. Okay, that's the reason adulthood, you don't look at it from one angle. Socially, an adulthood will involve somebody assuming roles that contribute to the welfare and stability of the family. Imagine somebody that is financially okay and sponsoring vocational programs in a society. To such society, that person is an adult. Why? Because he is doing what some other 90-year-old, 80, 70, 60, 50, or 40-year-old people could not do. And what is he doing? He has maybe NGO, he is sponsoring people's vocational skills, people that are impoverished, is pulling them out, is organizing health education. And even if the person is 14, 15, 16, they'll say, oh, that is our adult, that's our man, that's, mind the word, our man. Why? Because he has attained social dimension of adulthood. Another one could be cultural interpretation of adulthood. For example, a king in our lineage must be a male, and my dad is late, and me, I'm the next person in a male, and I'm 14-year-old, therefore I was crowned a king. The moment I got crowned a king, you don't call me a child again. I have attained culturally the role of an adult. Okay, why? Because all the rituals I've been able to go to, I'll be recognizing myself as an adult. Okay, at that point that person has assumed cultural dimension of an adulthood. Okay. Another one is economic independence, among others, practical understanding of adult and adult education. Okay, therefore, adulthood can be seen as a phase of human development characterized by biological maturity, involving all those characteristics, all those features: legal recognition, psychological independence, social responsibility, cultural acceptance, mind the word, and economic self-sufficiency. Okay, we have characteristics of adults as learners. That is to say, now when we are talking about adults as learners, we have looked at who an adult is. Now we are looking at them as learners. That means we have put up an adult in learning process. Then who are they? Mind the word, there is an adult, right? But now we have pulled up an adult, we have put him in a learning process. That is what this place is talking about. Then who is an adult as a learner? That is to say, what are we expecting from these adults as a learner? Now, adults as learners are mature individuals who participate in learning based on their life experiences, based on their personal needs, based on their work demands, or based on their social responsibilities. They are generally, according to the theory of andragogy, they are usually self-directed, goal-oriented, they are experience-based, they are practical when it comes to learning, they are motivated intrinsically. That is, they are motivated from the inside. Okay, now let's look at 7 key characteristics of adult learners. Self-direction in the sense that they know what they want. Okay, unlike children who do not know what they want. Now, experience in the sense that they are not coming with empty brain. They are people that have professional skill, they already have personal maturity, they have had experiences before, they are just coming into this learning curve just so to hard. That's the reason anybody taking them or pulling them through learning process, they don't get to be referred to as lecturer or teacher. They are usually called facilitator. Why? Because these people are not seen not to know anything. They have experiences. You are just to navigate through the process of learning and pull them through. Just like me saying that I know how to drive rightly. Okay, but there is a new car in town that I just got and I needed somebody to teach me how to drive. I initially have driving skill, but this type of car now is self-driving car. Now I have a driver, a trainer that is to train me on how to drive a self-driving car. I will be in the car. Maybe it's by me communicating, the car will be driving. So when the person is teaching me, he's not going to be teaching me as though he's teaching somebody that had never driven before. Okay? The person that has never bought a car, that has never driven a car or thereabout. But in a situation where it's okay, yeah, okay, you remember this thing when you were ahead. So as for this car, this is the way you will do that one. Now he will be leveraging on the known to take me to the unknown. Another point is that they are goal oriented in the sense that they know what they want. Okay, their learning are always student centered. Okay, they have objective even before coming to the learning process. Also, they have active learning, relevance and immediate application. All you are teaching them, all you are training them, all you are pulling them through, they want to see the practicability of all, the relevance of all right in the class. It's like somebody that is in driving school. As I told in the class, I'm in the driving school. Why? Because my husband promised me a limo, and the limo, I need to know, I don't know how to drive limo. Okay, now when the person got into the class, the facilitator started teaching the person dy dx. Now, what's the relationship of dy dx in mathematics to me driving limo? Okay, why? Because the guy that is in the class came with an objective. Okay, he wants to see the practicability of or the learning process is taking or she is taking to him or her driving that limo. Now compare such an individual to another facilitator. Instead of putting the student in the class, they went to the field. They have a truck, the truck. Okay, they say cyber truck. Okay, madam, sit down now, be looking at the way I'm driving. That is okay. Now when you press this, this is the way. But in the limbo that's going to be given to you, this is the sign. The person will be imagining, okay, this is the way I would drive. So that is the immediate application, immediate practicability, the relevance of what they are. Unlike you putting the person in the class and start teaching the person dy dx, now you now do summation, this and others. So that's one of their characteristics as adult learner. Okay, they are internally motivated. I think I've talked about that. Unlike this course has some points attached to it, there's some unit attached to it, and when you're done now, you guys will soon be starting the exam. For the purpose of that, you guys don't have any other choice but to come to the class, right? But that is not for an adult. What is motivating you is external. External in the sense that it is the mark, is the grade. But it's not the mark, it's not the grade. They are the one that are determining their motivation. They know what they want. So it is because of what they want that they are in the class. Another point is transformative potential, time consciousness, among others. Okay, let me quickly go through what then is education. I think I've talked about education, and I explained it by telling you that education is different from literacy. A literate person is more like somebody that was given a rice, while education is somebody that was given rice, and in addition to the rice, he has meat, he has coleslaw, he has egg, he has all others in addition to the rice. Now, literacy, where literacy stops, education goes beyond it. Now, literacy is the ability to read, write, understand, communicate, and use information effectively for personal, social, and economic development. Basic education, basic learning curve. But when we are talking about education, it is lifelong in view. Now, let's look at the difference between the two. Education is broader because it's a process of acquiring knowledge, skill, and attitude. While the literacy is the ability to read, ability to understand, ability to write. Education on its own is the process, a broad process of acquiring those, while the other literacy is just your ability to read, write, solve, communicate, and other. Now, when we are talking about education, we are talking, it covers all aspects of learning and it covers all aspects of development. Why? Literacy focuses majorly on certain skills. It could be communication, it could be writing, and all of that. Now, when we're talking about education, it could be formal, it could be non-formal, it could be informal. But literacy is usually serve as informal. That is foundation of education. It serves as the basic. It's usually informal education because you go there, you learn, then you move on. Now, when we're talking about education, it includes professional, vocational, moral, and civic. That means when we are talking about education, because before you can say that you are educated, you must have gone through the process of literacy. It's just like me staying put in primary one, and I say that I'm a literate person. Then you can stop. But before you can get to primary six, you must have gone to primary one. Now, so the person at primary six level can be said that, oh, I'm educated. Why? Because he has gone through the process of literacy, which is primary one, right? So now, when we're talking about literate person, he knows how to write, read, so basic arithmetic, while educated person goes beyond that. Then he learns moral value, the societal development, the civic responsibility, the professional, and among others. Okay, now literacy for ability to read and perform basic arithmetic. Okay, you can please go through below are the comparative examples to better illustrate the distinctions. Okay, I think I explained that. Now, when we're talking about the scope of adult education, we are talking about, okay, what are then the coverage of adult education in Nigeria? Any functional literacy program, they are termed as adult education. These people in this community, they do not know how to write. Now, there is a basic school for them, a functional school for them, so that they will know how to read and write, maybe in their market. Okay, that falls under adult education. Another one is continuing and recurrent education. For example, a reskilling process, a reskilling education. You unskill to reskill among others. You acquire new skill, you acquire new qualification. It's not that you've not gotten some before, but you are continuing in the process. It's like you've gotten one, now you are adding on. That is reoccurring or recurrent education or continuing education. It also come under adult education. Another one is vocational or technical education. Me and you understand what that means. Tailoring, fashion, and how it comes under adult education. Civic and political education. We know during the electoral period, each party, they have a way of sensitizing their followers on this is the way to vote. Those ones, they also come under adult education. Another point is health and environmental education. And in Lagos, we all know the effort Lagos State is putting into sensitizing people, the implication of them indiscriminately dumping refuse and all that. Those are health or environmental education. They also come under adult education. Another point is entrepreneurial education. Okay, special and non-conventional adult program, digital and distance learning opportunities or programs as well. They also come under adult education. I will try to drop the content in the description below so you can have something to leverage on and study. Okay, now let me quickly go through few concepts. Although I've talked about some before in the course of my explanation. What is adult education? I've talked about it. What is adult basic education? I've talked about it being a subset of adult education that focuses on foundational skills. Now, when I'm talking about foundational skills, I mean the reading, writing, arithmetic, and digital literacy. So any educational program that focused on that is what we refer to as adult basic education. Okay, AB basically teaching people on how to read, write, solve basic arithmetic, then teaching them digital skills and all that. Those are adult basic education. Then who are adult learners? I think I've talked about that, right? Then why do we need it? The essence of adult basic education, certainly basic skill for them to be able to function in their society. At the core, ABE teaches functional literacy for them to be useful to themselves. Okay, another point is lifelong is for personal growth, for economic empowerment. Okay, for somebody that doesn't like in the class, I give you an instance of an individual who was transferred wrongly, or let me say dubiously, an amount lesser than how much the person actually should have sent, and the woman was able to do, oh, no, my money is actually 1,005. You sent me 150 naira. The woman was able to help herself because of the fact that he understood numeracy. Okay, now somebody that has never gone to school, now they taught the person mathematics, how to do this, then the person opened up POS, economically is helping himself. Okay, that is one of the benefits of ABE. In our social and civic participation, we have lots of people, the past presidents, we have lots of politicians that they have basic education, and with that basic education, they were able to do one or two or three things in the IC, participate in their civic responsibility, execute, go to vote, and all that. Okay. Now, another point is it helps them it helps in remediation and transition. Sometimes higher education is basically focused on remedies, deficiencies. For example, when you have in conventional school, people that did not get mathematics and they went back to lesson, and those are forms of adult basic education. The next one I want to look at is andragogy versus pedagogy. And when we are talking about andragogy, sorry that I'm trying to be as fast as possible, I'm trying to make sure that the video isn't too short. Okay, when we are talking about andragogy, that's the method of teaching the adults, while the pedagogy is the reverse method of teaching the children. Okay, there are concepts behind it. Okay, there are differences behind this, and who propanded, or who is the father of andragogy? Martin Knowles. has different principles guiding the theory of andragogy. The same thing applies to the theory of pedagogy. Okay, now let's try to look at the difference between here are the contrast between here are some contrast between andragogy and pedagogy. Learners' role in adult education, learners are self-centered. That is for so adult education basically uses andragogy in its principles, in its teaching, in its content, in its context as well. Okay, so when we are talking about adults, there are some principles of andragogy and all of them apply to adult education. The example is that when we are teaching them, you have to be their teaching should be self-directed. I mean, they should be self-centered. The goal of the education is self-centered. They are the one that will determine what is the objective of what you are teaching them, right? In adult education, learners are self-directed. They set their own learning goals and choose often the learning activity so that will guide the whole process of them achieving it. Now, also the experience play important role when it comes to andragogy. Reverses the gate for pedagogy. Somebody that does not know how to does not know the left and right, that is the pedagogy aspect. Now, the Ministry of Education will set for the person look at this course, for example. Okay, you did not decide to take the course. You decided to take the course because the course was part of what was prescribed to you as a requirement before you can graduate, right? Reverse is the case when it comes to adults. Anything that is not relevant to their goal, they don't take. You understand? Another point is motivation. Motivation is usually internal for adults, that's andragogy, while for the other, it is usually external. The learning orientation, among others, the teaching methodology also differs. Okay, now you can read through all this. Now let's look at putting ABE into practice in Nigeria. That is to say, what are the models? What are the efforts of adult basic education in Nigeria, or in what way can adult education be useful in Nigeria or have been made useful in Nigeria? So, okay, there are globally literacy campaigns are largely efforts to reduce illiteracy, and the same way Nigeria has such efforts through National Commission for Mass Literacy, Adult and Non-Formal Education, established in Nigeria for the purpose of eradicating or reducing the level of illiteracy in Nigeria. And we have this change to accelerated basic education program launched by federal government in 2025. And the essence is that okay, when they go out, that forms part of adult basic education process. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. They want to make sure that in each community, for example, in Abuja, in Gwagwala, that there is adult education center where adults they go there to learn how to read, write, arithmetic. These are accelerated basic education program organized by Nigeria so that they will be able to reduce. Another point is general educational development and its equivalence. When you look at the Nigeria educational process, they say, okay, this is basic education. I think primary 1 to primary 5 or primary 6, they say they are basic education. That is, every Nigerian must go through basic education. They call them basic. Okay, that means to say you must learn, because through in those periods of time they expect that you should have been able to learn how to read, how to write, how to solve arithmetic and all that. That is adult basic education. It could also be language of instruction. In Nigeria, we actually adopt English as a foreign language. Okay, anybody coming in here, before you can acclimatize so perfectly, it will be required of you go and learn how to speak good English. Even myself, I have to drop my mother language and pick English, and that is an adult basic education. When you go to another country that's not English speaking, for example, you travel to Japan, you'll be made to go through their English proficiency program, and which is also part of adult basic education. Those are the programs that we have in Nigeria. And that one is workforce training and digital literacy. For every company, they have workforce training. They train, retrain, and other. If a new person comes into the society, they get them walk through the process. And that is part of adult basic education. Also in several communities, there are certain areas, there are certain communities, they have some functional literacy centers where people go learn XYZ in each community. Those are also adult basic educations. The learning processes of adults and the learning process of children, what are the differences? Okay, which I think we have been able to look at all this in the class. How kids learn with limited experience. That is to say, it is the system that will tell them what to learn. It is the system that will guide them through the process of. But when we are talking about adults learn with wealth of experience. You have to build on their wealth experience to teach them, unlike the children. Okay, when it comes to motivation as well, the children are more guided by external motivation. Just like I said, that you guys are here majorly by the fact that you want to have XYZ at the end of the day. You want to score this. That is not that reverse is the case for adults. They are after their goal. They are self-motivated. Can hardly be discouraged. They can hardly be discouraged. Okay. Now the next point is problem centered. For children, learning often involves foundational knowledge acquisition and is more teacher centered, while for the adults it is student centered, purely student centered. Now we'll be looking at teaching adult learners. That means what are the different techniques that can be used in teaching them. We'll be looking at the learning environment. We'll be looking at instructional materials that are useful or that can be used in teaching adults. Now, what are the different methods that can be used in teaching them? Number one is lecturing or by presentation. That means to say you stand, you are teaching them. It's a teaching methodology, right? Where the instructor delivers structured content to learners and often verbal explanations, just the way I'm doing it. That is, the facilitator will present new information verbally to learners. It is useful for introducing new topics to large groups, but should encourage interaction since you are dealing majorly with the adults. Okay, when you are introducing to them new concepts, you are expected to use lecture method. Okay, another one is that you can use demonstration method as well. The facilitator in this sense will show the learners how to perform a task, while learners they will be observing how the facilitator is performing the task, so that they will be able to later practice it on their own. Example is could be like computer operation. They are looking at the way you are operating the computer. It could be laboratory experiments. It could be how you are seeing on the machine and all that. They'll be looking at you. At that period of them looking at you, they are understanding how you are getting that done. Another point is questioning method. That is to say, you ask question to stimulate thinking. You assess their understanding and you encourage their participation. It could be open-ended question, even it could be closed question, or it could even be probing questions. You ask them so that they can use their sense. They can use their reasoning. You can probe into them reasoning and all that. Another one is guided discussion. That is, you direct learners to discuss a particular topic while you are providing only guidance. And the essence of you providing the guidance is just to ensure that the learning objectives are achieved. You are just guiding the process of them discussing. Oh yeah, you are correct there, but how about this angle? Okay, so that is guided discussion. Another point is group discussion. That is, you can allow the learners to work together in small groups and for them so that they can exchange ideas, so that they can solve problems, so that they can share experiences. And this is actually good. Why? Because it encourages teamwork, right? It also helps them to have communication skills in a large sense, and it also promotes their ability to think very critically. Another example is simulation or role play. Simulation or role play. That is to say, the student acting out real life situations, acting like real life situations, just to develop practical skills, decision making or interpersonal communication skills. For example, job interview. You said, okay, assuming that I am your interviewer. Now, answer this question. Then that is simulation. That is role play. It could be conflict resolution. You say, okay, imagine this person and this person slap this person. So using conflict resolution theory. So how would you solve this? That is role play. They are imagining themselves in a particular. It could also be customer service, right? Another method is drill and practice. Or practice. So learners repeatedly practice a skill until they become experts, until they become proficient. Example of this is like typing skill. pronouncing something, you tell them, yeah, pronounce it over and over until they're able to master it. Another one could be mathematical calculation. You give them several examples. They are practicing until they're able to get it. Another one is technology mediated learning. Technology mediated learning, that is learning facilitated through digital technology such as LMS, Zoom or Google Meet, YouTube videos or mobile learning applications, online discussion platforms or forums. Okay, so every of such you put, just like the way I'm doing, how I'm using technology mediated learning. Another one is self-directed learning, that is learners learn independently to identify their learning needs, they set their goals, locate learning resources, and then they evaluate their own progress. For example, is online course like like uh, teaching, like certificate courses online and all of that. There are several platforms like that where you get to learn about a particular skill independent. Nobody is going to guide you and all that. Another one is independent research, reading educational materials, among other. The next one I want to talk about is adult learning environment. So when we refer to adult learning environment, we basically refer to everything that has to do with the process of adult learning and how they were able to learn the very best. The environment through which adults are learning, it involves, number one, the environment itself, that is the physical environment. It involves the facilitator and the adults themselves. They form part of the environment. So now, what are the adult learning environments? What are the things that promote comfort, participation, and meaningful adult learning environment? Number one is respect and relevance. respect and relevance okay. Number two is psychological safety. Learners, they should feel free to ask questions in any. They should feel free to make mistakes. They should feel free to express their opinions. Another point is relevance and motivation. Learners activities should address learners immediate needs, and this should motivate them to continue learning, not intimidating learning environment. Another one is physical and social context. That is to say, the learning environment should have proper lighting, comfortable sitting arrangement, good ventilation, minimal distractions, and positive relationship among the learners, not just among the learners, even the facilitators. Okay. Now, additional characteristics also include inclusive learning environments, interactive learning environments, collaborative learning environment, flexible learning environment. You don't get to say that this is how we have been doing it and this is the way we must always be doing it. Okay. Another one is supportive learning environment. Another one is learner centered environment. So very lastly, I'll be looking at instructional material. When we are talking about instructional material, we are talking about the resources, the tools, the equipment that are used in facilitating teaching and to enhance learning by making concepts easier for people to understand. Anything that I use in teaching you, they are referred to as learning materials. As you have it here, they are tools, resources, media used by educators to support, enhance, and facilitate the teaching, right? Teaching and learning process. They are all referred to as instructional material. Now, let's look at different types of instructional material. Print media is there, right? Print media, which we are all familiar, that is like textbook, handouts, newspaper, brochures, charts, among others. Another one is visual aids, that is material that communicates information through images and graphics. For example, photographs, posters, flip charts, or flashcards, or whiteboards. It could be a diagram, or you have a poster in your class. Those are referred to as visual aids. The next one is audio or video materials. Me and you are we are very conversant with that. For example, a podcast, a radio program, a recorded lecture like this. Okay. Another one is digital skills. Digital tools, right? That's like smartphone, projector, tablet, computer, learning management system, a PowerPoint presentation, interactive whiteboard, like, or it could also be educational websites where you go through and order. Another one is interactive tools, materials that actively engage you in the learning process. Interactive tools, for example, educational game, like when you are playing a game on how to drive. Okay, that is an interactive tool, like simulation, or they give you a practical equipment to work with, or they give you, you are told to carry out online quiz, or they give you a discussion forum that you should anchor. It could even be virtual reality application. There are a lot of them out there. Okay, now let's look at essential guidelines when we're talking about instructional material. What are the things that must be put in place when we are talking about instructional material? Number one is clarity. Your material should be as clear as possible. It should be simple, it should be accurate, it should be easy to understand and free for unnecessary complexity. Another point is that it must be relevant. It must be relevant, okay? The relevance in the sense that the material should directly support the objective for which the learning process is. Okay. Another point is variety of media. You don't, I think in the class I told you how best I learn, right? That so you don't streamline or limit students or your pupils or your fast or your recipients to one method of media. I mean of a tool. You give them variety of tool. A combination of print, audio, visual, and digital should be used to accommodate different learning. Another point is practicality. Practicality. Instructional material should involve hands-on activity, especially when dealing with adults. Especially when dealing with another point is that it should be it should be learner centered. The material should encourage active participation, independent thinking, collaboration. Then we have cultural and local content. You are not using a material that has George Bush, that has Brits as the name, that has streets that are alien to the listener or to the. So you use examples that your listener or the student or the learners can relate with. Another point is that it should be accessible. Instructional material should be readily available, affordable, and inclusive. Okay, now in short, when we're talking about our education in all of this, it actually focuses on helping mature individuals acquire knowledge and skills that improve their personal, professional, and community lives. So why? Because adults, they learn differently from the children. The children learning process is pedagogy, while the adults is andragogy. Adult educators, we apply andragogical principles such as centeredness, wealth of experience, among others. Okay, so in all of this, we've been able to look at some topics that are in this course, and I strongly believe that you will do well when you face your exam. In conclusion, we've been able to look at what andragogy implies, as popularized by Malcolm Knowles, which is the science of helping adults to learn. We've been able to look at what pedagogy implies, which is the traditional art and science of teaching the children. We've been able to look at different assumptions and principles of andragogy, which includes self-direction, prior experience as a learning resource, readiness to learn, active learning, relevance and immediate application of whatever you are teaching them, problem-centeredness, orientation, goal-oriented learning, intrinsic motivation, transformative potential, time consciousness and role conflicts when you are teaching them, desire for respect, desire for collaboration, among others. However, when you look at all these assumptions, you want to ask yourself, are all these assumptions applicable in all cases? For example, when we're looking at rural areas where men are seen to be dominant, areas where it is established to be grossly uneducated, these principles might not actually play out, especially in some parts of the country. For example, in rural areas, how do you apply self-direction? Because there are several constraints by cultural norms, gender restrictions. For example, the principle of self-direction, and that principle assumes that adults can freely choose what, when, and how to learn. But in some parts of the country where we have over 60% of women in seclusion. That is to say, they are not free to associate in the society. They have some sort of restrictions. Now, women's autonomy is severely restricted, maybe by religion or by cultural norms. Then you are talking about self-direction, like principle of self-direction will have problem in that regard. Okay, for example, women in Poda, they cannot freely leave their homes to attend learning classes. They must take permission from men. So which means that the principle of self-direction has restriction, has challenges in some areas, especially women. They may not have authority to set their own learning goals without their husband, the male, approving of it. And we are talking about male, I mean, we are talking about adults generally, but here we are having some challenges now. Another point, another challenge that we might have, especially, is experience is to be seen as a learning resource. But in a situation where the region is grossly illiterate, that means that on what foundation would they then be able to have experience? What sort of experience are they bringing to the class? In a situation where somebody has never gone to school, he had no good knowledge of academics in any sense, and you want to capitalize on the learning experience of that person to teach or to facilitate learning, there will be a challenge in that regard as well. Okay. Another area is maybe relevance and practicality. In a situation where the Martin Knowles emphasized that adults, they need to be immediately relevant and applicable. Whatever you are teaching them, adults learning needs to be immediately relevant, immediately applicable. However, when we are talking about rural area, the economic and infrastructure realities will limit that practicality. In a situation where you are teaching somebody on artificial intelligence, you are teaching somebody on digital literacy, and the rural area has no internet, the rural area has no network, you will see the challenge there. So all these principles, they also have one way or the other, they have some challenges. We've also looked at transformative learning theory as propounded by Mezirow, which has to do with how adults undergo deep, meaningful change in frames of reference, beliefs, and assumptions through critical thinking. We've been able to also look at how transformative learning can be used in adult basic education program to help adults change their views and all of that. That's what transformative theory is all about. How to help adults change their views. It could be their views on political participation, it could be their views on Western education, it could be their views on early marriage, it could be their view on health education, it could be their view in several other areas. So how can that transformative disorient that dilemma, make me to have critical reflection, then come up with some contextual factors, perspective transformation, among others. Okay. Now, we've been able to look at the difference between literacy and education. The fact that literacy is just like a plate of rice on your table, and education has to do with plate of rice plus meat plus fish plus salad plus plantain, among others. Okay, which means that literacy is a subset of education. You can be literate and might not be educated, but you cannot be educated without being literate. Okay, we've been able to look at all these. Then we've been able to look at how do you teach the children, how do you teach the adults. The differences: when you are teaching the children, they depend on you, but when you are teaching the adults, they have self-direction. When you are teaching the children, they have limited experience, but when you are teaching adults, they are believed to have wealth of experience according to the principle of andragogy. When you are teaching the children, you are teaching them for future preparation, just like when you are in the class, application of all you are learning is going to be in the future, but when you are teaching the adults, they want immediate relevance of all that you're teaching them. The same thing applies to motivation. When you are teaching the adults, they are intrinsically motivated, while the children are extrinsically motivated. When you are teaching the children, it is usually teacher-centered, but when you are teaching the adults, it is always collaborative learning method that you are going to use. Okay, then we've been able to look at how andragogy can guide your teaching process. Number one, you will know that your role as a teacher is to facilitate. You are not just to be dumping knowledge, dumping or come be teaching your recipients with an assumption that they know nothing. And also, you are to embark on learning activities that are through discussion, through participation, through case studies, simulation. We've been able to look at adult teaching methods and all that. Now, in designing their curriculum as well, you center the curriculum around their problems. You center it around the problem, targeting the objectives. Okay, not telling them the why the X, an abstract subject. They don't want that. And when you are coming up with their learning environment, you know that their learning environment has to be collaborative, respectful, supportive, and among others. So when you're also doing the assessments, their assessment is not pen on paper that they'll just write, then you assess them. No, but it has to do with practical application of all that you have taught them. They have a target, they have objectives before coming to class, so you must allow them go back, reflect on what they have taught, use for all that you have taught them to solve problem. It is then you can say that you are assessing them. Also on in the area of flexibility among others. Okay. And we've been able to also look at the adults, they learn differently from the children, right? We've been able to look at several theories. To talk about transformative learning theory. We've been able to talk about andragogy learning theory. Yeah, we've been able to talk about experiential learning theory, which is by Cove, right, which emphasizes that adults learn best through the cycle of concrete experience, among others. Okay. Then we've been able to also talk about what is adulthood. Okay, the fact that it is multifaceted in concepts, it has to do with some of the determinants such as biological, legal, psychological, social, economic, cultural dimensions, among others. Okay, we have several dimensions as I just explained now. Then we've also looked at the implication of this to culture, how you can be an adult in your society and not an adult in my society. And we've been able to also establish the fact that when we are talking about an adult, the person must be socially accepted to be adult. Okay. Then we've been able to talk about quite a lot of teaching methods, right? Talking about collaboration, talking about teaching or lecturing, and among others. Okay, we've been able to talk about instructional materials, okay, and different types of instructional material, print material, visual material, audio material, visual, digital tools, interactive tools, among others, okay. And we've been able to look at the principles that should guide you in selecting which and all of that, especially while dealing with adults. You don't select a tool that is not flexible. You don't select a tool that is not accessible. You don't select a tool that doesn't have practicality or relevance. You do not select tools that are not culturally relevant, okay? Among others like that. So we've been able to talk about adult learning environment as well. So thank you for joining me. Please like, share, and please comment. Ask any question that you have in any topic that you would like me to pick on or explain further. You can drop in the comment section. I would really appreciate it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much, everyone.